You can start.
Yay! Awesome! And hello, everyone. Hello, Mikhail. Thanks for inviting me and thanks for organizing this remote session. I know it took some extra effort from organizing team side. Yeah, but super happy to present at the event. Wow, and super happy to see people. Hello, folks. Yeah, that's very nice when you don't always have a chance to see audience when you present online. But yeah, again, kudos to Mikhail and team. Let's talk about prompt engineering. And maybe by the end of this session, I'll try to fit it into like maybe 40, 50 minutes. You will answer this question. Is it art or science or who knows? Maybe it's your next job title. But first thing first, let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Maxim Salnikov, and this is not my first appearance for the events organized by Mikhail. I'm always sending call for paper submissions. He's running amazing community and amazing events. Always join them, my recommendation. And I stream directly from Oslo, capital of Norway, where I'm based and where I work in Microsoft. I have like long internal job title, but in a nutshell, I help developers to succeed with cloud and AI technologies. I'm personally building for web since late 90s of the last century. All these, HTML pages, being webmaster, and like PHP, MySQL, all these technologies. Ended up as
just one
yeah.
request, because we are using the speakers of my laptop, and it is not loud enough for people who are far. Is it possible from your side to try to make it a little louder, the sound? From our side.
I mean, I don't have any slider to make my sound louder. I can speak louder. Oh, you know what? I have. I'm not big expert in this restream.io, but what I noticed, there is echo cancellation and noise suppression. So maybe this. And also auto gain control. So if I uncheck everything, let's give it a try. I hope it bring extra noise louder. Okay, I unchecked everything. Now my voice is like one to one is completely raw as I speak without any processing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it okay? Is it better? Is it worse? Folks, tell me something.
Probably it is the same.
Oh, the same. Yeah, I mean, then only I can do is just speak louder. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, sorry. It will be challenging for you. Apologize for this.
So should I just continue?
Yes, please.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I'm a big fan of the developer communities. I organize meetups, conferences, and I even have one special conference that I will announce at the end of this session. And yeah, I'm always presenting about web development, cloud, and AI technologies. Before we dive into technicalities, let me motivate you from business perspective a bit. And a recent report from McKinsey says that generative AI and of course prompt engineering is 100% relevant to generative AI and vice versa. So this new industry will bring $4.4 trillion. And the main impact will happen across customer operations, marketing, sales, software engineering, and research. So I assume these areas, these fields are very relevant to today's audience. And like personally, it will offload us employees. So 60 to 70% of our current workload might be done by the power of generative AI. And of course, to get this power, someone has to build applications, right? And inside every single application that is using generative AI APIs, of course, there is prompt engineering. So this topic is 100% relevant, future-proof, and it's smart investment of your time being here. Very briefly about some historical milestones, just to confirm that generative AI era that is happening now is not something that happened overnight. And artificial intelligence as such is with us, with humanity, since like 50s of the previous century, and it started like trying to build expert systems that can answer questions as human expert. Quite soon it was it became clear that algorithmic approaches are not good for organizing this kind of experience, and instead of these algorithmic approaches, mathematic approach started to be used when we did not program computers explicitly, but instead of feed them with huge amounts of information, and then they learn on this by themselves, of course using again algorithms we created. And yeah, it evolved into what we call deep learning now, that is using neural networks to mimic how our brains work. And deep here means that there are multiple layers of this processing. And after all, around 2021, generative AI as term came, and it's subset of everything what I just presented about, like a specific part of AI intelligence, artificial intelligence that is focused on generating new things. And I mean, it's not actually a revolution. This is not any kind of secret algorithm that was invented. It's a natural evolution of all these approaches, plus tremendous computational power that was needed for actually training this model. If we briefly look at the potential use case scenarios, and this is actually, this slide is from another report, it's by IDC company, also very fresh, very recent, and this is kind of a journey, what's needed from company side, from business side, to get to this generative AI era, to solve some use cases that you see on the right hand side, like automated customer service, personalized, or even we can say hyper personalized marketing campaigns. For us developers, it's code generation and testing, and I can also add that code explanation. So it's on like all what will happen, what it will take from the company. It's on the left hand side, and in the foundation of everything is reskilling and training. And of course, prompt engineering is a prominent part of this point. And in the circle here you see the model itself, something that we trained, that we spent much efforts on gathering data, on training the model, and then it can make an impact. Luckily, as a, let's say, regular generic company, you don't ever need to start building this foundational model from scratch, because currently there are tons of different models available on the market, very different one. And here on this slide I just highlighted, let's say, big names, or like big players on that market: OpenAI, Google, Meta, Microsoft. Everyone is in that game. You hardly can name, let's say, IT giant that is not yet in a generative AI era. And yeah, these models are very different. Some of them are proprietary, some of them are open source, some of them are very universal, some of them are highly specialized, like for solving, I don't know, very specific biomolecular tasks. So in the foundation of this generative AI motion, there is always a model. And even though all these models are very, and of course, like if we talk about some commercialized service, there is also a gateway to this model in form of API, right? So as I mentioned, you don't, in vast majority of scenarios, you don't have to create the model yourself. You use what this company did for you, and exposed via just simple API endpoints. And with all these many options of models, there is one common thing in 100% of the cases. This is actually how we communicate with these models. And if we look at how we ask Midjourney to generate images for us, how we ask Microsoft Word to start with a smart draft proposal based on, for example, meeting notes using Copilot. If we look at how we as developers communicate with GitHub Copilot in its chat mode, if we look, after all, in the bottom of the slide at how we communicate with this ChatGPT and customer service, and this is, by the way, real dialogue on my I spend my evenings with co-inventing programming language for DJ. So if you see, I'm a bit into music and DJing, and yeah, I'm a technical person at the same time, so I try to create a language to actually describe all potential ways to mix two tracks. And I'd say this is very interesting conversation I have with ChatGPT. Sometimes I agree, sometimes not, but yeah, it's going. Yeah, back to this topic. There is a prompt that a beginning of our communication with large language model. And by the way, if there is a service that is saying that it's using generative AI, but there is no like some text field where you as a user, as a customer of this service entering prompt, that just means that developers created some other UI for you as like last mile of this service, but under the hood to communicate with these large language models, of course, they use prompts. So what is prompt? What is prompt engineering after all? Lots of different definitions. I found the one that satisfies me the most, and yeah, this is process of designing, so that means starting from scratch, refining, there is always iterations in the process, and optimizing during lifetime of the prompt. You might use to continue improving this prompt. This, I don't know, this, we can call it like text, sentences, whatever. Prompt to guide a model, large language model that we mentioned multiple times, for what? For producing more accurate outputs, outputs we want to see as a result, while keeping cost efficiency. I already mentioned that in vast majority of scenarios, you will use all this functionality exposed by third-party provider of this large language model. This is why, of course, for businesses, it's super important to keep an eye on spending. Okay, now let's have a brief look at prompt anatomy or prompt components. If we take, for example, we are marketeers or we build service for marketeers, and we want some marketing automation in form of writing nice, like engaging, compelling emails about new products. So what do we normally do? We send some prompt to, it could be ChatGPT in pure form, it could be some application we built on top of OpenAI APIs, whatever. The idea is the same. Prompt normally contains instruction, and in this particular example, it's very explicit, like write a product launch. It's not always like that. Definitely some input data or primary data is desired. Also, you can set the context, or you can call it secondary data about, for example, sentiment of the prompt you expect. And this is, in this example, it's quite trivial, so friendly and exciting. We can also might add the compelling and more explanations how do we want to see the result. Then we can be very specific in specifying target format. And on this example, we clearly see that we expect output, maybe not for human to use this directly, but as as something that we pass to the next component of our application, because this is JSON. I mean, we explicitly ask model to form a JSON object for us, and we even provide example in another possible component of the prompt. And we are like 100% explicit here. We even specify like where we expect to see the output. It's like completely unneeded in that situation, but also might be useful for you to know in for some scenarios. I can say in advance, this example is a bit synthetic and way like exhaustive. I mean, it contains repetitions of information. Like we described format in one way, we described format as example. In many cases, you don't need that details, but in some cases, repeating information is good. And you will see this on one of the next slides. So this is how we humans see prompts. This is how computers see the same prompt on their side. And disclaimer here, the session is about prompt engineering in general, but to pick some concrete example, I went for one concrete type of large language model, that is GPT. And yeah, it's safe choice because maybe this is the most well-known, the most famous type of models we have these days. Yeah, some other models from other providers might follow some slightly different scenarios. Some of them don't even operate tokens. But again, to make this session valid and relevant for vast majority of people in the room, let's go again for this safe choice, GPT type large language model. I bet that in 90% of scenarios you will use exactly that type. So what is token? One more disclaimer, I'm not a data scientist. I'm not like I cannot provide you fully precise information what's happening with the prompt on the language model side, but I know that before doing anything else, it splits this prompt into what you see on the screen, tokens. And how exactly it splits, it's also like up to concrete large language model implementation. So on this example, you see that some words, let's say more or less common ones, can take one token. Some words, for example, what you can see here, like introducing, it's actually 2 tokens. And for example, white space that is before the word is also part of the word that goes right after it. Yeah, the simple rule could be following: 1 token is approximately 4 characters if we talk about English language. Why do you as a developer, as a prompt engineer, like potential prompt engineer, ever care about tokens, about how models understand your prompts? Well, this is very important because it directly affects pricing. I already mentioned that part of prompt engineering is keeping an eye on cost efficiency, right? And again, maybe this is not relevant for 100 of the cases, 100 of scenarios, how providers of these generative AI APIs charge you for using these APIs, but at least for OpenAI directly and for OpenAI via Azure, it works exactly like that. You pay definitely for number of API calls you do. Sorry, like not 100% correct formulated. No, you pay for number of tokens you send and receive, and it's a bit unusual for APIs, right? So normally I don't remember any other API where you actually pay for let's say length of payload you send there, but it's the case here. And if you look on general cost or like general bill you receive after using these services, of course, yeah, it's length and number of calls you made. So if maybe you might want to either combine calls or split calls into multiple ones. It's a question of some experimentation. And of course, yeah, also you pay for the prompts you made during experimentation stage. Maybe it's just tiny fraction of everything. Another criteria is type of the model. So even on this table, it's actually from Azure OpenAI service. You see that different models charge differently, and the strategy here is very simple. You normally start with the most advanced and those most expensive models. You get some satisfactory results, and then you can try to downgrade to the next cheaper model, and if the results are still satisfactory, you just stay there and save some dollars. A few more words about tokens and their efficiency. I hope that I convinced you that token is very important item to understand. Already mentioned about white spaces. So normally they are just part of word that goes right after them, but if for whatever reason you have some number of white spaces just going one after another, you will pay for everyone. I mean, every white space will take a separate token, so be careful with that. Then sometimes tokens could be counterintuitive in terms of how we might understand this and how model will understand this in reality. The date is a very good example here. So you see the most price efficient way to name some date here is on the second line here. It's October 12, 2022. It's like a full date format. At the same time, if we try to somehow shorten this in hope to pay less, we will pay more. And for example, second one from bottom is taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tokens. So yeah, you will just pay double price for this particular part of your prompt. And last statement here is if you want to pass some tabular data, just pass it as tabular data. I mean, with tab separator or use pipes as separators. Models are quite good in understanding this. I mean, there is no need to add names to column names to every data item. And don't try to mimic JSON. I mean, it will also be recognized, but you will just pay more. Okie doke, these are basics of prompts and tokens. Let's go for more general recommendations. They are following. Be very specific. Leave as little to interpretation as possible. I mean, you might want to restrict the model to perform specifically on your task, and you will get, let's say, more predictable results. Order of prompt components is also important. There is no very strict rule or strict best practice like how to form this, like where example should go, where the data should go, where the context should go. Only some, let's say, experience-based recommendations. I'll have them on the next slide, but just make sure that when you change this components, change their order in the prompt, you might get different results, and then you just pick what works best for you. And for specific scenarios, also, as I mentioned before in our example, sometimes repeating parts of the prompt also will improve output. Definitely you have to find proper balance here, right? Because if you repeat some information in the prompt, again, you will spend more tokens. And if we talk about, I don't know, thousands or millions of the prompts you send to this API, it might heavily affect how much you pay for this. Again, it's a question of finding proper balance. And for scenarios when you, for example, ask model not to generate something for you, generate something new, but to, for example, categorize or classify some items, put some points, some items into some categories you provided. It's also, by the way, very well-known task for generative AI. And even though it's not about creativity and not about generation directly, still, let's say we can say that, okay, it generates proper categorization, right? So in that cases, instead of asking model to put particular item into one of let's say buckets you also provided, and you'll see this on practical example, you might want to say if you unsure which category to choose, just say like, I don't know. And again, in some edge cases, you'll get better results. I mean, yeah, definitely some manual processing will be needed, but like, let's say, less likely there'll be wrong item in wrong category. So, and yeah, it's also about being very explicit in the prompt in our communication with the model. So, based on these very general recommendations, some more concrete advices, more concrete recommendations. And if we it's actually about order and repetition. The general recommendation is following: start with instructions, with very clear instructions, and also you might want to repeat same instruction at the end of your prompt. Again, this is always iterative process. I guarantee you, I give you 100%. Your first prompt will be not ideal one. So yeah, experiment and play with this, and you will nail it. Also, you might want to help a large language model to recognize components of your prompt, and don't be shy. Use different separators. It could be, I don't know, some dashes in a line, or also very often separator, like how to separate examples, how to separate different components of your prompt. Number of hashtags going one after another, like 3 hashtags is more than enough. Provide headers to your sessions. Spend some time on this, on making sure that the instructions is very clear. In some cases, you might want to split task to subtasks. It can be even within one prompt, or maybe even more efficient to split it into multiple prompts, and then you can chain them, and I have a slide on that. Also, if we talk specifically about APIs exposed by OpenAI and Azure OpenAI, you can, in addition to the prompt itself, provide a couple of parameters where you can adjust, let's say, level of the creativity. And if this is, for example, marketing automation about generating new slogans, generating new product descriptions, everything, maybe you might want to turn on creativity to full scale, or vice versa. If it's about classification, categorization, some formal, more formal things, you might want to reduce this, let's say, creativity to make model behave more in more predictable manner. Okay, these were, let's say, general recommendations, and now some more concrete examples and some techniques. Let's imagine that we build solution for insurance company, and this is to behave like a first line of the support, just to classify some initial requests from our customers into like big buckets: auto insurance, home flood insurance, and also, you see, we use one of the techniques I mentioned. We give model an out. Then we say that this question is not relevant to insurance, when instead of still trying to somehow fit this request into 2 previous buckets. Absolutely valid scenario, and used in many real life products. What do we see on the shorter version of the prompt? Basically following some good practices. Okay, that's nice, but no examples provided. It's still absolutely valid scenario. This will work, and since there is 0 examples, we just call this technique 0 shot. Vice versa, if we supply the prompt with a few examples, it will definitely make it a bit longer, right? So we will pay some, I don't know, cents for thousands of our requests, like a bit more, right? Maybe not business critical at all. At the same time, the results will be more predictable. So this could be critical. This is why we decided to provide a couple of examples, just to help model to understand what do we mean exactly. And this technique is called few shot. General recommendation is just supply some examples. Another technique is to also simplify model life and to give it a chance to think a bit more. Slightly synthetic example. Definitely, you don't want to normally use generative AI and large language model in particular to solve some math issues, right? Some math exercises, but still, it illustrates the idea very good and illustrates another concept that is large language model is trying to find the lowest hanging fruit answer on pretty much any question. This is why when we supply this simple exercise, the initial answer, or like as is answer, we can call it like this, will be incorrect. I cannot tell you like exact calculation way how we ended up with this 8 million liters per year, which is incorrect answer. But I can tell you how we can ask model to calculate it correctly and see correct path. And this is just it works like a magic. But if we provide one simple extra statement there, one simple extra sentence, let's think step by step and explain calculation step by step. Again, it's not exactly these words, right? You can try to simplify this instruction, but you understood the idea, right? We explicitly ask model to think step by step. You'll see different output, with some steps provided. And after all, what's way more important is correct result. So this technique called reasoning, or another name is chain of thought. Another variation of this technique is when we do not provide this sentence, hey, model think step by step. Instead of, we provide example. And as you see here in dotted frame, we kind of explained ourselves. This is what we added answer. Explained model that we expect this format of output, and this is not just the final answer, but some steps, and again it made a result from incorrect to correct. Before next variation of the same idea of reasoning or chain of thoughts, I can I want to briefly say that prompt chaining is absolutely a good idea, and maybe in some solutions that are more complex than Hello World, you will use this one. And it's not like a technique of prompt engineering itself, it's more technique of how you architect your backend layer. But just keep in mind that that's totally a valid scenario when you use output of one prompt as a part of the next prompt. So you chain the calls to these APIs. Of course, in that case, it all has to be synchronous, right? So latency becomes important there. I mean, you cannot run these three chains in parallel because every next chain is dependent on output from the previous one. So if we use prompt chaining technique, we can come up with another idea for reasoning. Is when in, let's say, first prompt we do it in a simple way and ask model to explain step by step very explicitly. And we use output. We use output as an example for the next similar prompt. Again, it's definitely a very imaginary scenario, but this is something that automates our work. Like instead of creating these examples ourselves, right? And of course, it's very simplified, right? There might be multiple examples, and for some complex scenarios when model still cannot understand properly what you want to get from it, you might want to provide multiple examples, and you don't need to actually create these examples manually, thanks to chain of thought or reasoning plus prompt chaining. Also, you will need prompt chaining when you hit prompt length limit. And by the way, I forgot to say, then In case of using these third-party providers like OpenAI or Azure OpenAI, there is always a limitation on the number of tokens you can send in one API call. I mean, it's not like a price is not the only limitation. I mean, you cannot send, I don't know, 1 million tokens, because current models, if I remember correctly, like currently like commercially available APIs can accept up to 32K tokens, which is still quite a number, right? If we talk about the text, it's definitely not about a few sentences, right? You can be, I mean, you can send a good amount of text, but not infinite at the same time. So what if your task is to summarize large document, and like really large document, like whole book, let's say? Definitely it will go over limit of prompts you can send to API. What can you do? You can split this document, book, whatever, into some chapters, pages, you name it, and just to make sure that every chapter is within token limit for this particular API. You ask summaries for these particular parts of your larger document. And by the way, this is where you can actually send parallel requests, right? And after all these requests fulfilled, like completed successfully, you ask same model, same API endpoint to send you summary of the summaries. This is the way you can process large amounts of information, and this is why it's called prompt chunking, because you need to apply some logic, and of course that's really good to have smart logic on creating these chunks or splitting the documents. So these were some basic techniques of prompt engineering, of improving your prompts, and using all these not all about, like at least some of these techniques, you can create some really smart solutions. Like, for example, another very often very popular scenario for using generative AI is building different flavors of knowledge bots. It could be some internal bots for a particular company employees to simpler navigate through like internal documentation, or all these endless contracts with different services providers available for employees. So if, let's say, if your company has some knowledge base or for employees, that's a lowest hanging fruit scenario. As well as it could be exposed externally if you build some service for your customers where they also can ask questions on services you provide, and you have some documents in, I don't know, PDF, Microsoft Word, Markdown, whatever format, and you want this bot to be very smart. My strong recommendation is to build process called retrieval augmented generation. We don't have time, unfortunately, to go through this flow in details. I can only say that it's about prompt chaining. It's about enhancing, like, or enriching context of your prompt by the data you gathered from your internal knowledge system, and the way you organize query to your knowledge system based on some, let's say, completely raw, unprepared message you receive on the chatbot, either from employees or your customers, is also something that's taken care of by generative AI. So I strongly recommend you to learn this pattern, reg, and if you plan to build something using generative AI, or plan to move your career that direction, this is point number one for you to explore. On the practical side, I recommend you to go and explore what I created based on this concept, like not created from scratch, of course, used some foundational repo from my colleagues in Microsoft, and rewrote everything to JavaScript. I'm a JavaScript guy, and like initially backend was written in Python, now it's in Node.js, and yeah, I simplified lots of things in favor to simplicity. So this project is open source. You just go to GitHub, you can easily fork this, you can easily spin this up on your machine and check the code. You will understand how all this retrieval augmented generation process works. If we talk about ready-to-go commercial services, we have the one for you on Azure. So Azure OpenAI part is improving very fast, and one of the latest additions is actually exactly what I just introduced. Let's say building all flavors of enterprise chatbots that operate only with the internal data without inventing something and taking something from internet. This process now is fully streamlined. If you open Azure OpenAI Studio, this is the question of uploading some files, specifying some Azure workloads where you want to store these files, and you will get ready for deployment code that you can either just spin up again on Azure using App Service, or download this and fine-tune it. Couple of tools, actually 3 tools I want to mention at the end of my session, and these tools definitely you will hear their names in your prompt engineer career if you were inspired to move that direction after my session. It's called LangChain, let's say, and semantic kernel. Basically they are similar. They have slightly different concepts under the hood, and if semantic kernel is based on plugins, then in LangChain it's more or less the same concept called agents. It's about actually, let's say, chaining your flows and adding some connectors to external sources, both to gather information from some source to enrich your prompt, or store results of your previous prompts for later usage. This is why semantic kernel, for example, has a concept of memory. So like really like automation, or maybe we can say industrializing your work with prompts and more general generative AI focused applications. And both tools are open source. And one more open source tools, it's the latest addition to family of all these amazing tools, called PromptFlow, also by my colleagues in Microsoft. And yeah, it's I'd say it's prompt-driven developers. No, not developers, but development. Sorry. Let's say we know TDD, DDD. Now we have PDD, right? Prompt-driven development. This is where you architect some component of your backend that is about communication with generative AI APIs. So you start architecting by building the flow of the prompt, exactly like the name of this tool says, and then like leaves on this tree you add the different pieces of code. Works like magic, also open source, also has hosted version on Azure. Please go and explore and start using this. Yeah, learning resources. I picked only few links to present, 5 of them, and all these resources battle tested. I went through everything personally, and this set of information will keep you busy for maybe a couple of weeks if you decide to learn more about prompt engineering and decide to become prompt engineers. And by the way, I will send Mikhail this PDF, and I hope that there is a chance to share this with all of you. So I mean, you will get all these links. If you want to get it immediately, I have something for you on the last slide, and this is slide before last slide. Shameless promotion. I'm a big fan of prompt engineering myself, so I decided to organize world's first conference dedicated to this topic, and it's online, it's free. It will happen in 3 weeks, October 12th. Please register your free ticket. I work on the program now. The program as name of the conference domain says rocks. I guarantee you will be very surprised by amazing sessions our speakers submitted. And finally, my last slide. Folks, yeah, this is secret ingredient to start your prompt engineering career immediately. Find me on LinkedIn. Just either search for Maxim Salnikov or scan this QR code. Yeah, see, some people take out mobile devices. Please do this now. And yeah, ask me anything. Ask me about these resources before ever Mikhail shared this file with everyone. Ask me advice on prompt engineering, on OpenAI, on generative AI, on everything. I'm super open for your questions. Yeah, that's it from my side. If I see we have 5 minutes left before the break. If you have any questions, I'm yours.
Some questions. I will ask just people to come closer probably and to ask the questions.
No, I didn't have a question. I just said that the links are covered by so.
Yeah, Max.
Yes.
Request is because when we are streaming, we are adding some labels and part of actually written information on the bottom of your slides coming from industrial me track B, something like this. It will be really great if you are able after the session to send the slide deck.
Yeah. You will get this PDF in a few minutes. Or like if you need it like immediately or some link immediately, again ping me on LinkedIn and I'll try to answer very soon.
Thank you very much.
Okay, doc, folks. Then have a great rest of the conference. Have a great Saturday, Sunday, and all next week. Thank you for having me. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the nice session and have a nice rest of the day.
Yay. Well done.